Nebraska has to get down to their 85 scholarship limit. And it's interesting to see if they'll get down to even more than that if they add some players from the portal. Not a whole lot of news yesterday, over the weekend, kind of waiting to see if anybody would jump in the transfer portal. Well, we got a first edition today out of the quarterback room. Richard Torres entering the transfer portal. I think it's important to remember, too, with these guys, fought through spring. I mean, we're really trying to make the Husker team, you would assume. I'm not going to speak for them, but I think as this news comes out, just remember, I don't know how much of this choice is up to them, so just if you're a Husker fan, don't tweet at him or anything.
Yeah,
just leave, you should have been more loyal.
How dare you?
Knows? Yeah. So Richard Torres off the transfer portal. Of course, interesting in a variety of ways. He did play. We only got one public viewing of Richard Torres because he was hurt coming in out of high school. Redshirted last year, was 9 of 18 for 66 yards and an interception to Phelan Sanford in the spring game. But always kind of seemed like, a guy that doesn't necessarily fit the room as far as what the rest of the guys bring to the table. Big arm, not necessarily too mobile. So there might be a better offensive fit for him. I think that's intriguing. As we were talking a lot on the captain about, what are they going to go more with the best quarterback? Are you going to go with the best kind of fit to your system as far as Jeff Sims and Casey Thompson? Does this signify, maybe just because it's the first or maybe for some people, maybe an expectation, does this signify that Nebraska is definitely going to value the ground game from the quarterback to you?
I don't know if that's what it signals as much as it just shows that, and I don't even know if it shows Richard Torres just had a feeling that he probably wasn't going to get much playing time. Definitely not this season or the coming seasons if he had stayed in Nebraska, because if Nebraska is to continue in their pursuit of Dylan Raiola, and if he comes here, you would have to think that the number one overall prospect in the country of whatever year is going to get a larger chance at becoming the starter at whatever school he ends up going to. So I think Richard Torres just kind of saw the writing on the wall and thought if he truly wants some playing time, whether it be this season or next season, that he would probably get that at a different school. You could look at it as a emphasis on the quarterback running game, because if you look at Richard Torres, you look at the last two quarterbacks that Frost and company recruited and brought to campus, Heinrich Harburg, Richard Torres, big guys with big arms. The only difference between them is Heinrich Harburg more of a running quarterback than Richard Torres. Torres more of a pocket passer. Has enough, legs to get out of pressure in the pocket, but you're not going to see him scrambling for 25 yards and scoring, 10 touchdowns on the ground any season. So I think that's also a part of it. Just his style didn't really fit with what they were looking for. But I do believe that he's going to be a very successful quarterback wherever he ends up, because as you've heard coming out of practice, the dude has a cannon. He's very accurate, very poised in the pocket. So I think that he'll be successful wherever he goes. It just wasn't meant to be here at Nebraska.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting just him signing at Nebraska, because obviously you're coming off the Adrian Martinez run at Nebraska, and you're kind of thinking that maybe that's where Scott Frost's offense was going to be stuck, is to have a mobile quarterback, or would be most utilized, obviously. And so, I always thought it was kind of a weird fit to begin with. Of course, then when you bring in Whipple and Casey Thompson, then maybe that kind of opens up an avenue there for him to play. But I still think he is going to be a good gift for somebody out of the portal. We didn't see, again, too much of him outside of the spring game because he's still coming off that injury. Didn't play in the highest level in Texas out of San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And so there were kind of some questions there. So he's definitely kind of on the prospect list, and that's where he entered the spring. And, you wonder if things maybe had gone a little bit differently. Seemed like Heinrich Harburg rose to kind of that third position. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was kind of that camp battle that led him to believe, okay, this maybe the coaches value something else. Maybe he thought he played better and didn't get the move up the depth chart that he wanted. But regardless, he gave a very good kind of send off to the transfer portal on his Twitter, including thanking Coach Rule and staff. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hurt feelings or anything involved here. And you do wonder too. Is this the start of the cuts that we expect to see? I don't want to say cuts again, sorry, NFL style. But it's just the start of getting down to the scholarship level that we expect to see again by the 30th, because that's that would be the best way to get it done, which is this Sunday, so that those kids have an opportunity to look around and start to get recruited. So, is that the start of this, or is this maybe something to the side? Richard Torres just kind of deciding on himself that this was not the move, this was not the place for him, and he was going to move on. We'll see, and I think we'll start to see, especially if you start to see more guys entering the transfer portal in the coming days. Any last thoughts on Richard Torres?
No, I'm just gonna look at his recruiting profile to kind of see where else he was being recruited to, just to see where you. Oop, first one that pops up,
Colorado,
Kansas State.
Oh, Kansas State.
Okay. Some of the other schools that were recruiting him that he got offers from, just to see where. And this isn't like an exact science. It's not like, oh, well, they were recruiting him, so obviously they're going to bring him in and he's going to be their next quarterback. This is just some teams that might be one of the first ones to reach out, that might be looking to add him to their roster. Kansas State, San Diego State, Tulsa, UNLV, Utah, UTSA, Washington State. I think he'd fit really well at Utah and Washington State. I think those two would be really good. I mean, honestly, Kansas State would be the same way. They don't need a running quarterback, as you saw after Adrian went down. I don't even remember who their backup was, but
Will Howard.
Yeah, Will Howard. He wasn't a threat with his legs. He could run, he could move, but for the most part, he was in the pocket, dicing teams up, handing the ball off to Deuce Vaughn. So I think Kansas State would also be a pretty good. And this, tells you how many quarterbacks they have on their roster. So this says they have 3 on their roster for Kansas State.
As far as places he visited, too, it says on his Husker bio, he chose Nebraska after also visiting Kansas State.
They only have 3 quarterbacks on the roster,
and they've got a pretty good, kind of taste in their mouth from getting a
Nebraska transfer.
Yeah, so
they're like, oh, wait a minute, let's do it again.
So we're turning tea leaves and projecting him to Kansas State at this point.
I'm just saying, 6'5", 210 pounds. I'm sure he's heavier than that now. I'm sure he put on some weight here at Nebraska. So 6'5" quarterback with a strong arm,
because he's listed at 6'4", 250.
Oh my goodness! What did they do to him?
Oh,
Richie. Nah, he'll be fine.
Nah, he's good.
Wherever he ends up, like I said, I think he'll be successful. Strong arm quarterback, good pocket presence. So we wish him the best.
Yeah.
And this isn't the end. We were making fun of Colorado for having 18 players enter the portal. They've had 41 players in the portal since Dion took over, since he gave that speech about his Louis bags come in, and one of his coaches said 20 to 28 of you or something like that won't roster this coming season. Well, it's up to 41 now. And we love to make fun of Colorado and whatever, but Nebraska's going to have to go through kind of the same thing. It might not be to that extent 18 players in one day, but you're going to have to cut down 10 players, 10, 15 players at least.
The interesting thing is I at least project Nebraska not, again, kind of like this Richard Torres move, is that they're going to probably cut guys that don't have a whole lot of returning production. Again, I said cut. But they're going to let guys go to the portal. Yeah, at this point, we understand what's going on. But Colorado's, and that's what I found fascinating. I read this out earlier, but per Bill Connolly, these numbers are just crazy as far as the returning production that they've lost. 5 of 8 offensive linemen. Oh, is there another one?
Victor Jones Jr.
The
past year at UNL has been great, but in life, well, hold on. Great, but life goes on. First of all, I'd like to thank God for me even having the opportunity, but I would also like to thank Coach Rule, Coach Sat, and Coach McGuire for giving me the opportunity to play for this team and compete. But with that being said, I will be entering my name in the transfer portal with 4 years of eligibility.
So there you go. I think we got our answer there. I think exit meetings are going on.
Yep.
I
think things have been happening since the spring game ended. We are now two transfer portal entries deep. Richard Torres, Victor Jones Jr., it looks like, is some of the younger guys who were recruited by the previous staff.
And also keep this in note: 2 members of the red team this past Saturday.
Oh, no.
How many red team squad members are we going to lose? Victor Jones, though, Victor Jones Jr., first of all, great wide receiver name. Sounds like he's going to be a good wide receiver at least. 6'1", 195-pound receiver in the portal. Like you said, redshirt freshman class, so he's still got 4 years left to play. Not a whole lot more to say about him. He's just kind of, didn't really have a whole lot of time to develop here.
Nope.
But didn't play right away and did finish, the other day with 2 receptions, 10 yards for the red team.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the ones that we were really excited about when he was recruited. He was brought in. That says recruited by Sean Beckton and Mickey Joseph on his 24/7 profile. it was one of the ones that we were more excited for, kind of a bigger bodied wide receiver, kind of getting away from what they had recruited in previous years. A guy from Orlando, Florida, Olympia High School. We were looking at him and thinking, yes, this is going to be, the future of Nebraska's wide receiver room, a fast guy with some size, some good hands. It was 1 year in, so you can't even say he didn't develop into what you wanted him
Right.
to. This is just a guy who redshirted his first year, probably didn't think he was going to get much play at Nebraska, whether it be this year, next year, whatever. So he's entering the portal, and we'll see where he ends up. Another guy that had some decent offers, second offer on his list, Arkansas. That'd be a pretty good school. They like to sling the ball around quite a bit. So
Yeah. I know Cincinnati and Kentucky, other teams that were after him, at least as a high school product. The wide receiver room, and those were guys, again, there's been people or fan accounts online projecting which 12 guys they want to get cut and stuff like that. That's not necessarily a good thing to do. So, professional or we call ourselves professionals haven't necessarily done that. But I think this was a guy that from the outside looked like he was going to have to make a move in the spring just because of how much they added to the wide receiver room. Of course, with Joshua Fleeks, Billy Kemp, they brought back IGC, they brought back Xavier Betts, and so you're just kind of adding a lot. And then, of course, they added a lot of the true freshman receivers coming into Nebraska, kind of left these guys. And I wonder how many of these guys are going to be, because when you do that sort of projection, you're kind of thinking, okay, well, these guys helped. These guys are part of the new guys they brought in. And then there's this group of redshirt freshmen, sophomores that are there that haven't played yet, that you say, well, it's not necessarily fair to them because they haven't had the chance to develop. Not everybody can come and play right away and play a significant role.
Mm-hmm.
But again, numbers wise, those are some of the guys that are kind of left out. So again, I'm going to be interested to see how many of those guys have a lot left to be seen for their college career. But again, that's the news there. Victor Jones Jr. as well as Richard Torres hitting the transfer portal, and we might see. It sounds like maybe exit interviews are going on. We might see more throughout the day. We'll keep you updated on that stuff as well.